Hey, Alan, Jerry, Natalie, Lori, Kathy.
Hi, everybody.
Am I chopped liver? This is Alan.
I said Alan at the very beginning. You were the
Oh,
first one.
I was still
You were
muted.
number one, Alan.
Just a little humor.
Always something.
Hello,
Oh.
everybody.
Hello.
Jerry. Hello, Jerry.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
Hi, Rabbi.
Kathy, how you doing?
I'm okay. My knees are acting up. So, but other than that, I'm fine. How about you?
Well, I'm with you. You know what? As you go through this life, there's always some more and more aches and pains, but thank God we have each other.
Amen.
Remind me, Jerry, did we do the Rabbi Eliezer, the day is short? I think we did that one, didn't we?
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah.
My memory isn't worth anything.
Was it last week? Yeah, I think we did.
Mark thinks we did it.
I think we did too. And also, did we do you're not required to finish the work, but you can't leave it alone either?
Mark
Yeah, I think
says yes.
I'm going with Mark.
Mark is usually right.
Mark is smart. Oh yeah, we did. We did all that. We're well into chapter 3 already.
Don't remember what I had for breakfast, let alone where we're at.
I'm with you. I'm with you, Alan. I just finished my recording. So are you guys watching that, the video recording each week?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm glad you, and send it to all your Facebook friends.
I would miss it for Argentina, China.
I tease my kids about it because, these children, they have like 1,500 or 2,000 friends. And I go, how can you have so many friends? What's like that? What is that all about? Who can remember the names of 2,000 people?
Hello, Susie and Paul.
Who's coming to the Israeli whiskey thing tonight? Crickets, huh?
Yeah.
Paul, you're not
I'm
allowed
not
to
a-
come, Paul?
I'm not a drinker, Rabbi.
That's all right.
Yes, you were coming.
I think we're almost sold out anyway. So it's free, but we're allowed to have people in.
My whiskey days are over, but I have a chartered bus to take the guys back.
That works. Well, we're almost there. I got Bernie's coming on, and
Arnie.
yeah,
Well, Arnie.
I let Arnie in, then he went away. Oh, there is Arnie. Good.
When I have a scotch and water, it's only water.
Oh,
How are
good.
you, Rabbi?
The Klein's in. Good. Hey, Mel, how you doing? Get some
Doing well, thank you.
wonderful.
Of all what's
Can I throw
happened,
something out there to the docs? Have you guys read what the Israelis have come up with Tricor? Remember the old fibronolactone for cholesterol? I've been reading about it on the web. You know what I'm talking about? No? Okay, never mind. Well, check it out, Tricor. That's the name of the drug. And it's the old one, the lower fat, lower cholesterol. And everything in studies now in the States, but the Israelis are reporting remarkable results with it in bad COVID. Everything binding up the fat seems to do the trick. Let's hope. I need to have a special blessing for that.
But I keep talking, doctor. We can maybe get them to sponsor.
Dr. Arnie, I want to be serious. The Pfizer booster shot was approved. There's a big controversy as to why it was approved so fast. They moved it up, and there's a lot of, it's all according to who you talk to, doctors, that the booster shot should not be, a lot of people say you should not have the shot, the booster shot.
Who says that?
Uh,
Who says that? That doesn't
Wait a
make
minute.
sense.
Let me get my spreadsheet out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like to see that spreadsheet.
Well,
Okay, Alan, listen, you've taken 2 shots already. What they're showing is that somewhere around 6 to 8 months, the actual immune response to the second shot, really, you're boosting it, right? Starts to wane. Pfizer actually faster than Moderna. Okay, I've already had my booster Moderna, right? I mean, the bottom line is that the FDA really, they've done their phase 3. What people have a total misconception what phase 3 means. They pretty much have done it. And frankly, if you can get your booster now, get it. That's my advice.
absolutely.
But then again, we got better guys here who can comment on that. Come on, we have some internists here. Val, you're an internist.
Yeah, we have 3 physicians. We have you, Mel Klein, and Mark Sorkin. So that's,
Okay.
and we have,
Where's Mark? Is he on? I didn't see Mark. Okay.
Arnie, is the booster shot the same shot as 1 and 2, or?
It's exactly the
Exactly
same.
the
I mean,
same.
no difference, exactly the same. And in fact, what was interesting, when I got my third Moderna, I got it. When I got the second one 2 weeks later, I actually showed an immune response, which means the first one had done something. This one I got, and literally sort of a little soreness in the arm, 0. So I'm glad I got it because it means my immunity was already slipping away.
yeah, no, Susan and I are going to get it.
I mean, Mel's more qualified than I am. I'm a surgeon. You cannot cut this out, guys. Mel talk.
But you have to wait about 8 months now?
Now 6 months.
6 months.
6 months.
And they're all
No,
at
excuse me.
University Hospital. Huh?
I just told Jerry earlier today, Susan and I went to UC Health last night. 5 minutes it took us. You go to the appointments, it brings up COVID-19. You hit that, it gives you 3 hospitals to take a choice and ask you whether you had Pfizer or Moderna or Johnson & Johnson. You hit which one is applicable to what shots you got. We hit Moderna.
Steamboats.
We're going September 1st at 8:10 and 8:20.
And 8
Let me repeat that
and
again.
8:40.
And
I'm going
8:40.
You're going at 8:40.
Jerry and Natty are going 8:40.
Susan and I are going on it.
Again. You go on UC Health's portal.
Let me tell you, I walked into CVS, guys, and the pharmacist, the one out on Riverview Parkway, his name is Chad, and we were just schmoozing, all right? And I asked him about the booster. He says they cannot actually administer as many COVID vaccines and shots that they have. It took 4 minutes after that, and I had my vaccine booster, so did Joanne.
You had
They
the
take,
booster.
this was Moderna. They take walk-ins. I think I would call there first, okay? Some of the CVS is doing Moderna, some are doing Pfizer.
Pfizer.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, I'm amazed that people are balking. I mean, this is the real thing. And man, if they offer another booster in 3 months, I'm going to be first in line.
Right.
But Arnie,
That's
you
coming
had,
from a surgeon. Take that for what it's worth now. Well,
Arnie, you had to wait 8 months.
be quiet. I mean,
Arnie, you had to wait 8 months, right?
no, I'm a little over 6.
They're,
I'm a little over 6.
I think they're saying 5 to 10 now.
Yes. Yeah.
We're going
I'm
to getting ours when
Good.
this conference is over.
Good.
Arnie,
Yeah.
what do you think about that horse dewormer?
Okay,
What?
guys, we're gonna do a little Torah here in a little bit, but let me say, this is Torah. This is absolute Torah. We're saving lives, and this is getting a message out. Yes, there are going to be people who will convey some unfortunate messages that you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. Protect yourself. The Pikuach Nefesh is on the highest level, and so we have 3 physicians here, And I don't know if Mike Grazi is on, but a registered nurse who administers thousands of these shots. So if you can get it, get it. And if you are listening to someone who's telling you not to get it, stop listening to that person. It's dangerous. I'm serious. It's dangerous, right? So with that,
One more thing, Paul and Arnie, where'd you get your shots?
UC Health.
You
Where did I
said,
get? Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Where did I get mine?
Yeah.
CVS on at Riverboard Parkway in the Target.
oh. And
You know what I mean?
Paul,
But like I said, in fact, all our friends are getting them now also. And because they have way too much COVID vaccine. I mean, pure and simple. And
And
Mobile
Paul-
now, the same thing. Everybody's gotten their boosters.
And Paul, where did you get yours? UC Health?
what happened?
You go on to the UC Health portal, you go to appointments, you put in COVID-19, because it'll bring up the different appointments. It'll give you a time, it'll give you a hospital that you can mark off. And you mark off whether you did Moderna or Pfizer,
Thank you.
okay?
All right.
Rabbi, just in the same vein, do you have any of the statistics of how many in-person people will be at our high holiday services? You know any head counts now?
Yeah, we're around 200 for some of the services. So it's not, it's not 800, but still, we're a couple of weeks away. So it's, there's still some, in Denver, everyone is waiting to the last moment, but,
Alliance has a 200, and that's with the two services combined so far.
we have more than that, but
Yeah.
anyway. Hey, Alan, if you want to draw your blinds a little bit, because we can see your face right now, the sun is washing out your face, and we like to see your sweet punim. All right, so let's do a little Torah and say some brachas. Wait for Alan to do this. Let there not be so much light. There we go. Good. There's that sweet face. Ready?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's still washed out.
Baruch atah Adonai, Praise are you, Adonai, God, creator of the universe. You've sanctified us with mitzvot, and you commanded us to engage with words of Torah. Just a little quick, because my video message just finished recording it. It's about this week's Torah portion, in which it says, "V'katavta, write for you a Torah. When you cross this Jordan River, put it on the huge rocks so that everyone has access to it, and write them be'er hetev, with clear letters to have explanation." So that's what we're doing with our review of Mishnah and Torah during the weeks with you guys. I love being with you as we explore Torah and hear your voices. Why are we, as we're doing that, we are exercising that commandment of be'er hetev, writing them, exploring those words with different perspectives and enriching each other with it. I don't know if you look down and there's a little box. There's someone on our viewing screen. It's Shana Jacobs. You can't see her because her camera's not on, but she's our newest Temple Sinai mess. Oh, there she is. Oh, take your mask off so people can see you, for goodness sakes. Yay. Shana is our newest Temple Sinai staff member. She's our she's going to do programming and publicity. She's marketing. She's awesome, really wonderful. So welcome to Shana. And this is a good group of people here. So we're thrilled to welcome you. So with that, let's go ahead and bring up the text that we have for this week. We're going to be in that third chapter of Pirkei Avot. And I think if I can make this a little bit larger. Oh, look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. So we're going to pass that. Now we want to go down to the very third one. The second Mishnah out, it's number 3 on the left-hand side of the commentary, in which Rabbi Hanina talks about the necessity of government. And so I'd like to see if someone would like to read this and then the commentary afterwards, and we can talk a little bit about this, because it's easy to have to kick on the government and to say, well, they're always the bureaucracy and how come they didn't do this, how come they do that. Imagine a world where we didn't have a government. So who would like to read this from Rabbi Hanina and then the commentary on the left-hand side?
Okay, I will.
Thank you, Alan.
Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion, the deputy high priest, teaches, pray for the peace of the government, for without it the people would eat each other alive.
Right. So we find that, by the way, in Rousseau and others who philosophers who were exploring what it meant to have a government and what kind of government. Of course, he was trying to overcome the monarchy and thinking about a republic on the model of what the United States was creating as well. And there's no perfect government, but a world without government in which we do not have laws and process and a reflection for the well-being of the most vulnerable in a society. I suppose that's where a government really comes in. The wealthy and the powerful, the strong are going to survive. But a society is also defined in great measure, certainly from the Torah's point of view, by how we treat those who are most vulnerable. We find the refrain so often, make sure that you do not oppress the stranger, the orphan, the widow, the poor. Make sure that you provide for them, provide welfare for them, provide security for, again and again, the orphan, the widow, the stranger, and the poor. And then with some frequency, the reason why, it'll say, because Avadim hayinu, you were also slaves. You know what it was like to be a stranger. You know what it was like to be poor and abused and vulnerable. Therefore, be all the more protective of those who are in similar straits. And I think that's the ultimate goal from Torah's point of view for government, that we need to come together to protect them. So, Alan, why don't you read for us what Rami Shapiro has to share, and then we can all weigh in on this.
Can you make that a little bigger? If
I'm going to do my best. Okay.
All right. See what you can do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Good.
Rabbi Hanina was no anarchist, believing that left to our own devices, we humans would naturally do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. From Micah, I think. On the contrary, he believed that if not for the external restraints of law and the police and courts to enforce the law, people would turn on one another and greed and violence would define us exclusively. It's interesting to note that it is the priests who fear the people. Interesting, perhaps, but not surprising. Priests owe their authority to fear, more specifically to the people's fear of God. If God were not fearsome, people would have no need for priests, whose job it is to keep the people safe from God through ritual and sacrifice. The priests scare the people, and the people scare the priests. But is Hanina right? Does the law keep you honest? Would you suddenly go wild if there were no one to stop you? Or would you live pretty much as you do already? There's a place for government and law, but without it, would we all become predators?
Right. So let's stop for there a second and come back to each other. I don't know if that's a contention necessarily that, or a message that anyone can contend with so much, but I did want to open it up to some thoughts. He also based the power foundation for the priesthood on fear. I want to address that a little bit. But there are anarchists out there. There are people who say that, too much government, it can be too interfering and restrict our freedom. But again, we have to go to the extreme on the other side. What would it be like without? So I'd like to invite anyone to share some thoughts and perspectives.
Well, I think a good example of what it would be like without government is what's going on in Afghanistan right now. There's no government, and we see what's happening. It's terrible.
Mel?
Well, with government in this country, and we've certainly got plenty of it, we still have problems. We've had riots in the streets. We have people killing each other every day. We have people stealing things and hurting other people. So, government isn't perfect, but perhaps it constrains to some degree the kinds of things that might otherwise go on.
Just 2 days ago, I had a security briefing from the Jewish Colorado and our security team, that's Phil Niederhausen and the ADL Scott Levin, and about that young yeshiva student, that Shmuel, who was murdered. Now, it was not an anti-Semitic crime. These hoodlums, all who were teenagers, 18, 19-year-old kids, had a crime spree in which they were just targeting whomever was around. Now, that yeshiva had cameras. That yeshiva had a code. That was the terrible thing. This young man knew that he was being pursued. They chased him and ran around to the back side of the school and tried to press the code to get in. But of course, in the panic, he mispressed the numbers. So all of this is on videotape. It's just a horrific scene. But that's the case in which you don't have, even with the government, you still have gangs, you still have hoodlums. But we know very well what it was like to have a countryside ruled by the bandits, and how everyone was vulnerable. And so what happened? The rich hired their own private security system. There were times in this nation where police were hired. Before there were municipal police forces, there were also Pinkertons. And by the way, in certain parts of the American East, like New York, there's still semi-private volunteer fire brigades. Now, in the old days, you had to pay a subscription to the fire department, and they would put a little badge on your house so that if, God forbid, something should happen, the fire department would know, oh, this one paid his dues. And right, over time, that's been a little bit more democratized as government became stronger in this country. But we've lived through the time in which only the wealthy were able to afford protection. And we know that that's another part of government, to provide for us fire and police support. And I can't emphasize how astounding it is to me that there are people who say defund the police. It's like, really? But you're right, Mel. I mean, even with them, we have crime. Imagine what it would be like without them.
To me, it's kind of more interesting to look at what kind of mindset enables somebody to beat up that yeshiva boy. I read a piece by Rabbi Delkow, who used to be in Denver, is now in Florida, and he wrote a piece to his congregation questioning how we as a society allow these kids or young people or now adults to develop into that kind of person. It's not even allowing them, but kind of, these kids were always in trouble, I guess. They were in youth homes. They were in the system. The system knew about them. And how do we allow that to continue when we know that we're not doing right by these young people, and that we're not creating an environment for them?
Yeah, Janet, you just went mute, but I just want to point out, this yeshiva student was not beaten up. He was executed. The video has him literally being executed. So these people, yes, troubled young men, absolutely. Murderers, yes. And we can look up and down the class system and say, well, only the wealthy and the best educated, they're the only ones because they're so well educated and they have so many privileges. There's no criminals that come from that class, right?
Wrong.
Right? We have murderers and thieves and abusers who went to the finest of schools with every privilege, So a society didn't abandon them. We just have people who are wired in a criminal way, and society has set up laws to apprehend and to punish them. It's not the society that created every crime. We have individuals who have indulged in that from every class and every background.
You know, Rabbi, they say it was not a hate crime, but just because they didn't specifically go out looking for Jews or blacks or whatever, doesn't mean that they didn't shoot him because he was a Jew.
Right. We don't know. I mean, 4 of the suspects, or 5 altogether, were apprehended. We'll find out more about their reasons, but that they were filled with hate and rage. Well, yes, absolutely. They were filled with hate and rage. Wanted to pivot just a little bit from that to that contention that Rami Shapiro said, is that the priesthood bases its power on fear. I want to get back to that text real quick. He said, it's interesting to note that it is the priest who fears the people. Interestingly, perhaps, but not surprising, priests owe their authority to fear, more specifically to the people's fear of God. If God were not fearsome, people would have no need for priests. And I find that certainly one that is deserving of discussion. Interesting passage I read. I'm reading Seneca now, first century Roman philosopher, writer, leader, and his one of his major works was on anger. And some of the commentary to Seneca pointed out how interesting it was, that word fear. Now we have it also in the Jewish concept, fear, anger, how that intermixes. In the Jewish context, we wrestle with the word yirah, which is sometimes translated as fear and sometimes as awe. And there's a wonderful comment that I read in from a Jewish source. It said, well, what's the difference between fear of God, it says, and the great fear of God, or using the same word, sometimes it's translated as the awe of God, right? Or the awe of power, or the fear of power. What's the difference? Anyone wish to speculate as to what the response was? Go ahead, Arnie.
Yeah, I mean, that was, I made a note here already. I'm glad you swung around. That troubles me more, as it appears that whole 2/3 of our liturgy that talks about the love of God, throw in the garbage, according to this fear. But awe does change the nature. As awe is you're totally in awe of it. You can love it, you can hear it, etc. Fear I find very disturbing in that. I would like to believe that our religion preaches more than just fear.
Right, good. So again, this commentator also contradicted this idea of fear of God, but nevertheless, there is it's translated in both ways, and I'm going to bring it down to something a little bit more apprehensible, and that would be when we go into the judges' chambers, right? If we go into the judge's chamber, there is a little bit of fear and there's awe. And so the student asked his teacher, so what's the difference between fear and awe? And the teacher said, fear is when it all is about me. Awe is when I am aware of the significance of this power, of this force, of this authority for everyone, right? I fear for myself, but when I see that awe, and when I see the significance, the power, the authority on a grander scale, then that's when I have awe. Here's another one. It just occurred to me. Who's been to the Niagara Falls? right? Right? Did you go to the Maid of the Mist? You went in there, right? And you said, right? So when you are watching it, right, you're filled with awe, right? You go, whoa. I mean, it's the power there, and you're just amazed at the majesty of this power. Go in the Maid of the Mist or in the caves that are under the water. You get a little bit too damn close to it, right? And then you get the fear. Right? And then you go, oh, now I see. It's the same water. It's the same waterfall. But when I felt personally endangered, there's the fear. When I stood back in a safer position, I could see the big picture. The big picture brought me awe. And I think, Arnie, that's where it all comes down to.
Is there a generational thing about this? Because my father, I took him to one of the early Talmud classes that I was taking, and it was about loving God and God loving you. And he said, even though his grandfather was a Melamed, I didn't even know that till a few months ago. My father said he'd never heard that before. He just thought you're supposed to fear God. That was the Jewish way.
Well, fear is a very important controlling factor, right? Again, in the old days, not modern parents are a lot different. So I'm told. But in the old days, if mom was upset with us, what would she say?
I'm going to tell your dad.
I'm going to tell your dad.
Wait until your dad comes home. Right? Because mom wanted the behavior, but she didn't want the fear. She wanted the fear to be into daddy. So we come home and then it's like, oh, you got to punish the kids now. Oh, well, thanks. Now, right? Now they're going to say lovely things about me when I die, right? I was the punisher. It's different now, apparently. Who knows? But fear is a great controller, right? But it's not positive. It's not something that is good for us. But it's there, Arnie.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the big three, or some people say four. If I want to manipulate a crowd, if I want to mobilize a crowd, if I want to energize a crowd, it can only work on fear. Number two is love. Three is hate. And some people say throw in four, greed. So I think he's taken the fear part of it, and it minimizes the others. Like some people in our government in the last number of years have built on hate. Everything is hate. So yeah, I mean, religion is by definition to mobilize people to get the benefit from it. They've got to tap into some of it.
Right. So I would hope that religion in the most positive way, and I think that's why the Torah begins with the creation of the universe, of a wow, of an awesomeness, not on fear. But we're human beings. So let's get back to our text. This is our next. I have to make this a little bit smaller, Alan, so that people can get this piece. And who would like to read the third of the Mishnah in chapter 3?
I'll read it.
Thank you, Mel.
Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion teaches, when two sit together without sharing words of Torah, their talk turns to foolishness. Hence it says, do not sit among a gathering of fools.
Okay, well, and then do one more.
When two sit together and share words of Torah, the Shekinah rests between them. Hence it says, then those who fear God spoke to one another, and God listened and heard, and a book of remembrance was written before God for those who fear God and give thought to God's name.
Wonderful. Let's go over to the commentary on the upper side, number 4. Can you read that? If I make it larger, I'll make it.
Yeah. Wisdom emerges from the meeting of thoughtful people. Sitting with another human being is an opportunity to challenge and be challenged, to open up to new ideas, and to see the world in new ways. Wasting this opportunity through idle chatter is denying the value of both self and other.
And that's exactly what we do here.
Well, okay, we're sitting together with Torah and sharing with one another. But is it? I mean, when they're referring to this, the words of Torah, what are they referring to? What are they referring to? Is that Torah with the large T of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, or is that a larger understanding of?
I think it refers to the commandments.
Okay, well, there's commandments, Torah. What else what's a larger definition of Torah?
Kindness, talking kindness between the others. Don't gossip. Say, gee, so-and-so is really having a rough time. And the other one says, so what can we do for them? That's Torah.
Okay. So,
what can we do to fix things?
Right. So that when topics turn to ways in which we can bring more compassion or kindness. Okay, that's Kathy's. Who else has something to share? What about if you have talk about politics at your dining room table? Is that Torah?
No, that's hell.
No,
Yeah.
no. It could be hell.
Could be hell. Yeah.
But I mean, who
You
grew
might-
up with political conversations at the dining room table? I certainly did. Right?
Yeah.
It wasn't hell. I mean, I learned a great deal about it, and we didn't all agree with each other. It didn't say, okay, Daddy says this, now everyone has to agree with it. Right, good. Arnie, and then
Yeah,
Jerry.
I mean, Judaism has always prompted. That's why you're not supposed to study Talmud by yourself. You're supposed to get somebody to study with. The concept is that verbalization back and forth broadens your perspective of what the meaning is all about. We're now faced with an interesting problem in our society. And that has to do with the internet. This is a course I'm taking on social anthropology, which is fascinating. Well, tomorrow I decide the world is flat and that all people wearing yarmulkes ought to be shot. Well, how long would it take me on the internet to find an ecosystem to support that? And there's the problem, is that, in the old days, that was so true, but he's not mentioning anybody here, but who you should have discourse with. You see what I mean? And the internet is opening up a whole new arena now, where ecosystems prompt hate and fear and, and paranoia, and, et cetera. So it's interesting.
A lot of misinformation on the internet, and also intelligent people, like a certain congressperson in Colorado, comes out with really nonsense, but she has followers and she raises money, and it's a really difficult thing in our society.
Very tactfully.
Bernie,
stated.
let me press this, and then Paul as well. Yes, those are the voices out there, and if we gather at our dining room table and we don't address those, but rather we talk about endlessly who's the new quarterback for the Broncos, or what we're going to watch on television, or something of just a pure entertainment level, as opposed to the serious topics, then we will have, that's the indulging in the foolishness as opposed to Torah. So what I'm pushing for is that to understand that when we gather together, and not to be vitriolic against one another and say, well, you're a Republican and I'm Democrat, and therefore we're going to argue back and forth and that can be held. No. Talking about issues. There are a lot of issues back and forth. Every day there are issues that we can wrestle with. Where is there a safe, knowledgeable, interesting forum for us to have conversations? That's what this is, right? So that people from different points of view can share. But the ideal is also, whenever you're with loved ones and friends, you should also be able to do that. Yeah, okay, talk a little bit about the quarterback, but not endlessly, right? At some point, there's got to be something mamash, something significant. And that's Torah. I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead. Paul Levine.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I agree with everything you said.
You raised your hand. I thought that's what you were doing. All right.
Yeah, no, I just want to say I agree with you.
Okay, good. Yeah. Louis, good to see you. Mel and then Alan.
Within our religion, we have many different disciplines. We've got some ultra Orthodox kinds of people who that's all they do is sit around and discuss issues, and sometimes they don't live life, so they don't have the experience to really know what they're talking about. And then there are people on the other end who never talk about the issues. And so some moderation is important. And I think that's what you were saying. You kind of got to mix it up.
Right. Good for you. Good for you. Thank you. Alan.
I read that the Taliban, after August 31st, the first thing they're going to do is tear down the internet.
Well,
that means they're closing out the potentially the entire world to what they're doing.
Well, certainly a frightening group.
Right now, we need it.
There's endless topic with that. New York Times today had a very interesting take on Pakistan's role with the Taliban. There's a lot of ramifications going on there as they're making maneuvers. But my point in this, and I think that's what the Pirkei Avot was sharing, is that there's too many important topics out there for us to absent ourselves from them. Be educated, be informed, read the papers, and most importantly, connect with people who may not agree with you, so that you can have your ideas broadened and tested, and but also, and Mel, right to your point, if it's all talk and there's no walk, then Gorna Shalfim, there's no good in that for anyone. All right, so let's get back to our text. This is the concluding piece of, Mel, go ahead and read 6 and 7. We didn't get to those. I'll make that a little bit larger. Hold on.
Shekinah is the presence of God. Notice that it rests between them and not upon them. God is realized in the emptiness just outside the narrow mind of each person. Malachi says, giving thought to God's name refers to the practice of Gerushin, ceaselessly chanting a name of God, such as Harachaman, the compassionate one, or Allah, Krishna, Ram, or Jesus. Chanting God's name is a universal practice found in all religions and is one of the easiest ways to open narrow mind to spacious mind. And when you do, you are remembered, made whole, shalem, in non-duality, shlemut of God.
Right. So he got a little Kabbalistic on us, which is cool. Again, what does it mean that God is not isn't on a person, but is between them? And I would expand that to a little bit different sense. That if I feel that there's God's presence just here, then I feel like an ownership of God, that God is on my side. When I see God interact in those spaces between me and you and the others, then I see God as a shared connection with all of us. And then I pause with my thoughts, my opinions, my perspective, and realize that, wait a minute, someone else's thoughts and perspective are also to be respected and elevated as a part of the holiness. That's the mochim de gadlut, the expanded mind. That it's not just about me; it's about the us. So anyway, let's go on to our next little piece here. That make it a little bit larger. There we go. And this, the conclusion, Mel, this applies.
This applies to one as well as two. Let one sit in solitude and be still, for he will have received a reward for doing so.
And then number 8.
The commentary is, you cannot be alone, for you are part of the all one. Sitting still in solitude removes the delusion of isolation and aloneness and reveals the all-embracing unity that is God.
Wow. So that's easier said than done, because sometimes alone is just alone and lonely, right? But he's saying that when you're alone, but you are focusing on that which is greater outside of myself. I may be alone, but I connect nevertheless, spiritually, intellectually, with all this world around me, then I still feel, even isolated, connected with one another. And that may have been a harder concept for us before 18 months ago, right? Because we've experienced a lot of isolation. And where are we right now? I mean, most of us are alone, but we're connecting with one another in a very magical and wonderful way. Any thoughts before we get to the next one? So this is the fourth Mishnah. Who would like to share on this one? Louis, you're always a good reader. Going away. Louis, you got to unmute though.
I needed to change my my view so I could see myself to unmute me.
Okay.
Where are we now?
At the very top, Rabbi Shimon ben
Netanel teaches, if three eat together and share no Torah, theirs is a feast for idols. Hence it says, without God, all tables are full of vomit and filth. But if three eat together and share Torah, theirs is a feast with God. Hence it says, and he said to me, this is God's table.
Go over to some of those comments. On the left. I'll make it a
on
little
the
bit
left. Rabbi Shimon expands on Rabbi Hanina's teaching by adding the dimension of food. Sharing a meal together is an opportunity to share wisdom as well, but too often it is a time for self-aggrandizement and one-upsmanship, worshiping the idol of self rather than opening to the wisdom of God.
Okay, and then 12.
Notice with God rather than of God. God is with them in their meeting. People cannot meet one another as mochim de katnut, narrow mind. For narrow mind simply projects itself onto the other and meets nothing but a funhouse mirror image of itself. True meeting happens from spacious mind open to wonder and diversity, mind open to non-duality rather than conformity, mind that honors the narrow self even as it realizes the greater self that is God.
Wonderful. Very, very good. So I don't know about the filth and the vomit piece, but to break bread with someone and in a meaningful way is elevated. Mind you, the Christian took this concept and made that the central part of their early experience, not the modern one, but the early experience was of a meal. People would come in, hungry people especially, and they would be fed and with food, but also they would be preached at. And it evolved from that into the mass that is experienced. Nowadays, it's much more ritualistic, and that there's this is the wine and this is the wafer. But in the old days, originally, it was actual food. And the success of organizations like Salvation Army and others, what do? Susan and Paul, you guys are knee deep in this. What is the church doing as a part of their mission?
Well, the church their mission is to help the hungry and the homeless. The church that we deal with at Christmas. Right. They feed the hungry and the homeless, but there's no religious message. Yes, there is, because
absolutely,
we haven't given lunches lately to the to them. But when we did, they always had the communion beforehand. I mean, we didn't do it, but somebody came.
Right. No, I'm not making criticism of it. I think it's just
No, I
natural.
know. I mean, I'm just
Right. In a sort of way, it goes right to what Mel was saying, that it's one thing to talk about, believe in God and all the rest. But man, if you're not feeding the hungry and helping the homeless and bringing some positive energy and significant help to those who are needing it, all of your prayers are sort of self-serving, right?
Right. So just to answer you on that, when I delivered the lunches on Tuesday of this week, a couple of the people who work for Feeding the Hungry, Metro Cares, came out and they said, you can't believe how much people really appreciate these lunches.
Right. Of course.
And I didn't ask, but that's the message.
Right.
And it's really that.
And that's a nonprofit organization. That is not a religious organization.
Right. So, but that's the significance of feeding others. That if you just preach God and you're not feeding and helping those who are vulnerable, then you're not getting the message. Arnie.
Yeah, I mean, there's a different a twist on it as well, which is a little disturbing. I mean, what they're saying, and it's well recognized, that when you're at a meal was a time of gathering, meal was a time of discourse. But Judaism has essentially excluded us from that with koshering. And think what over the years, what that created in terms of the paranoia, blood, Christian blood for matzahs, and all this. So I'm not sure how to balance that. Obviously, the feeding and that whole thing is absolutely correct. But at the same time, it's saying, get together with people and talk. Right. Yet, yes, only with Jews, which is a little bit disturbing.
Right. You've really hit on something very important for us to address. Again, how do we understand this? By reading some of the comments by early Greek and Latin authors. And frequently their biggest criticism of Jews was that we cared only about ourselves and that we did not break bread with the others. Now, it was all right for a Gentile to break bread with us, but we would not eat at their home, right? And of course, that reciprocity is important, is essential as a part of of building a relationship, and it has been problematic throughout. One of the motivations for Reform Judaism in the 18th century and early 19th century, as it was beginning, was exactly that. We want to have positive relations with our Gentile neighbors, and we're not going to allow certain dietary restrictions to prevent us from eating together. Now, does that mean you have to totally do away with the kashrut? No, of course not. There's certainly a way of having people come over to your home and you visiting to their home with and just say, thank you, I would love to come to your home. I can't eat the pork, but do you have some tuna fish? Thank God for tuna fish. But you can say, and certainly nowadays, it's not uncommon at all for someone to say, I would love to eat with you, but I'm gluten-free or I'm vegetarian or I've got peanut allergies or some other kind of restriction, and you're respectful of that. And I think it's perfectly doable to maintain a sense of your own personal dietary integrity and eat with other people, go to restaurants, make a relationship. And I think that's one of the strengths, a very important strength of Reform Judaism, addressing it. And by the way, Arnie, again, as I mentioned, this was not an issue that has arisen just in the last century or two. This goes back 2,000 years and earlier to the Greek and Latin authors, as they were looking at Judaism, were saying, how come these people never come over to dinner?
We have the same feeling for health. We have the same feeling, you know what I mean? Any mystical thing. Human nature. Suddenly you worry, what are they exactly planning in these meetings? We're not allowed into. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I just find that a paradox. And you're right. Reform Judaism, I'm new to it, and I'm impressed by the idea. They're addressing worldly concern.
Right. And you don't have to give up one or the other. And you don't have to give up your concern for your people. But it can't be exclusive. There has to be a universalism. A person who is hungry, it doesn't matter what their religion is, doesn't matter what their race or culture is. They're hungry, for God's sakes. Take care of them.
But going into somebody else's home or going to dinner with somebody, or do you think now we're more in our own communities, both Christians and Jews, that we stick to our own because of the times?
Times because of diet or times because of security?
Of security, of familiar, being familiar. Just different things that are happening now versus years ago. I mean, we often shared with Christians and Catholics when we were younger and when our kids were in school. But now we're more limited to our Jewish community.
Well, let's take away the 18 months of COVID and go back to the pre-COVID era. You guys share because, I mean, talk about your social. I mean, do you agree with what Susan was experiencing? I mean, does that match to what your experiences were? Jerry?
Yeah, no, we used to, go out to dinner with people of all religions and colors and, mainly from work, but still, I mean, that they were a social group. And we as far as I'm concerned, we still do it today. I mean, we really have so much of our lives tied up in the synagogue that I don't have that much time to see non-Jews the way I did when I was working. But I'm open. It's not like I'm shutting myself off on purpose. It's just that right now, the synagogue is a very important part of our lives.
Yeah, well, I mean, and our social circles do become more restrictive as we get older because we have we have our closest of friends, but we have our children and then grandchildren and all the rest. Obviously in my world, I'll get together with, that minister over there or this other person over here of different faiths. But for the most part, man, I'm with y'all.
Yeah.
I'm with you guys. So who else would like to share on this?
Well, I used to be a volunteer and visit homes for Jewish family service. And I've gone into some homes where they're non-Jewish and they don't understand Judaism. They don't understand the rituals that we do. And we're like foreign to them. And it's an enlightening process to see people who don't understand us. They think we have two heads. It's like, what do you guys do? I mean, what is kosher? Don't you celebrate Christmas? They're just not aware of what we do or who we are as a people. And of course, they're older people. So, that makes a difference.
Very good. Thank you, Bernie. Kathy?
Yeah, we have, non-Jewish friends. My brother refuses to convert as much as I pound on him. But anyway, we have a friend that used to, he can't anymore, have a roast pig for Thanksgiving. And the thing is that, everyone would bring side dishes. So I would just live off the side dishes, which believe me was plenty. But one year Mike said, I'm gonna smoke a turkey. And I said, okay. And so he brought it, and it turned out the turkey was more popular than the pig. The turkey was gone before that. Our next door neighbors, when they were still here, Christian, and they had us over for Easter. And of course they had the ham. So I ate around it, and they started with a prayer, and basically I'm just respectful. I fold my hands and look down, and I join in the amens, even if it's all in Jesus's name. When I'm in the hospital and a minister wanders in, they know I'm Jewish, or if they don't, I let them know. I scared one off one time. It was kind of funny. I say, hey, you want to feel my horns? Because I had a couple of bumps on my head. But anyway, he just backed out. It was like, doing that. But a lot of them will come in, and especially the African ones, the ones that come in from Africa, the missionaries, they come in and they are fun. And so are the nuns. And I am just so, when I'm in a hospital, any old visit is fine, but you get the ministers in there. And one said, I know you're Jewish. I just want to make sure, do you have a rabbi? And I said, oh, honey, I have a whole army of them. My six is covered, And we were taught, so we started, because what he would do is he would go, and if he ran into an unaffiliated Jew, he would try to connect them with a rabbi in a congregation. And I thought, that is awfully nice, And he's a Methodist, and he didn't know about you, Rabbi Rheins, but now he does.
Yay.
So, I will talk to him about
that is open and makes friends and connects. And that's,
when Mike came home that time, and I had a couple of Mormon boys at the dining room table, and they'd been there for like an hour, because I was bringing out all the Torahs and the prayer books, and I was showing them what God's name looked like in Hebrew. And this one guy tried to stay to the program and ask me questions, and are you happy, are you comfortable with your faith? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And then I would go on to explain some other things to the other guy who was really interested. So I don't know if you've seen him or not for that class, but he wouldn't be my first. So yeah, I just say, I'm Jewish, and there's nothing weird about what we do.
Right.
So
Arnie and then Natalie.
I mean, on the one hand, just a natural response, the natural involvement is that we obviously would like to be in communities that are more like us. Historically, that's a very dangerous process, because the more isolation, it's easier to build on that. One of the three pillars of fascism is that, hey, guess what? It's not your fault, it's their fault. Pick something that's isolated. Pick something they have real limited contact or understanding of. I can sell you on fear of that one real easily. We all hated Russians back in the 50s. The little old Corbett came here, remember, for the gymnastics, and we all looked at each other. This is what we're afraid of? Suddenly the humanity of it came real. I'm not sure. I'm new here, so I don't know what you guys have done here in terms of that obviously individuals, but do we have a concerted program in this community to try to increase and use the parameter of how many people are we interfacing with that are not Jewish? Right. How many blacks do we interface here? How many Hispanics do we interface with? As long as we stay isolated, and the more we stay isolated, it's a lot easier for, right now, a guy like Trump comes up and he's got the Muslims and he's got, but sooner or later, anti-Semitism is going to come out, and the less people understand what Jews are, the easier it is to sell it.
Right. I agree with you. I know our two major projects, of course, we have our interfaith Thanksgiving program, and we interface with the United Church of Christ down the road here. When it comes to Martin Luther King weekend, Temple Sinai hosts this event and the other, but ongoing regular interaction. The last significant one involved Mel and Roberta Klein, and of course the Levines were a part of it, and that was the AJC, the American Jewish Committee, and they had some marvelous programs where it was, this group would be meeting with the Mormons, and that group over there with the Christians, and various, and it was high level discussions. It wasn't just, I'm okay, you're okay, and let's celebrate each other. These were great gatherings, and I had a privilege of being with them for a little bit. And Mel, I see you frequently. I say, gosh, how can we recreate this? And it's not easy to recreate it. But Mel, you want to share a little bit about your experiences with that?
Oh, it was a fantastic experience. We had a group of about 10 Denver Jews and about 10 people from the LDS community. And the people from the LDS community were unbelievable. They were solid citizens of many different stripes. And we began by trying to explain to each other, each of the groups, who we were. It was pretty easy to understand the Mormons, although it was strange to us, but you could understand the way they did things. They, even after we were done, they had no idea what we were talking about because there were 10 of us. So you knew that there were at least 11 opinions, right? They couldn't figure out what the hell we were talking about. And they wanted to know who was in charge. We said, we're in charge.
They all were.
It was very hard. But the one thing I really learned, I prior to getting to know these people, I thought of Mormonism as a very strange kind of religion and things that didn't make a lot of sense. And as I listened to them, there's still things that I couldn't subscribe to. But as I sat there thinking about this guy finding these golden plates and whatever, it was 200 years ago. It's pretty recent and didn't seem real. But then we had a guy who got these stones from God and bushes that burned, and we've got our own stories as well. And so you learn a little bit of respect for the other guy, and you learn that these are real people just trying to live good lives. And most of the people we met with certainly did.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And that was with the LDS. There are also AJC groups that met with Christians and Catholics. And et cetera.
So the Hispanic dialogue. And
we definitely need to do this. So Alan, we'll get to you. I know Natalie wanted to share real quick. So Natalie, and then Alan, and then Arnie.
No, I just wanted to say, how often do we invite people to our seders who are non-Jewish? And they really appreciate sharing the story. We go around the table, we read the Haggadah, and they ask questions. Of course, when we're with our Jewish friends, the conversation is not as guarded. I think we feel more comfortable amongst, when we're talking about topics that we share in Judaism. It's a more comfortable conversation. But certainly, I know that we make it a point when we have a Seder, there's always somebody who's not Jewish there.
Now, you two are wonderful, especially in that wonderful neighborhood that you have. Alan, I want to get you, and then Arnie, and then we're over time.
One night there was a knock on the door, and it was Jehovah's Witness. And they said to me, "You want to be Jehovah's Witness?" I said, "Hell, I didn't even see the accident."
Bang, bang. Okay, Arnie.
Like I said, it was interesting because folks might not know it, but I'm originally from Canada, okay? Montreal. I trained in the States in like 6 different places, all right? Like Seattle, New York, Baltimore, etc. And then I moved south. The Southern Jewish population is fascinating because it's very small and it's very fragile. And yet they've been very successful and they've survived. And some of the stuff they did, I found intriguing. Like, for example, they had a choir. The choir is interdenominational. It's made up, and it really is good. And it sings at all the different churches and the 2 synagogues. Okay, it's strangely enough, our services don't overlap, which they love. And so people actually, even to hear the choir, would end up like, I found myself one night in a Presbyterian church listening to it. Okay, Next, that was one idea. Interfaith services were built in and programmed into all the churches and to the synagogue. And the last one, which I thought was brilliant, because I didn't understand it, it kind of caught me by surprise, is that when a new minister comes and takes over a church or the shul or whatnot, he is officially installed, I don't know to what, it's an association of priests and rabbis. You know what I mean? It came to me as a surprise. The first weekend we were there, I was busy operating. I run over afterwards because Joanne said, you be there because it's a big installation service. And I walk in, the first thing that greets me as I walk through the door, I look up at the beam. There's an archbishop up there. We're talking a cross from chin to the book, you know what I mean? And, you know, with a cloak, and I look around and I'm in the wrong place. They were installing the new rabbi, which created a whole different concept. And these are, you know, I'm not sure, like I say, we're very comfortable, but there are things that one might consider doing like that. I don't know, Mel, if you're very active, we're actively involved in that. Maybe it's an idea to kick that around. I think it's good.
Well, we had a strong, what we called an interfaith ministerium in Denver. But I don't know, there's always something that, you know, things can, the centrifugal forces, things spin off in their own area. Part of it is political. There are those who wanted to very much be legislatively oriented. So when we gather together, it was going to be, okay, we're going to be lobbying at the State House for this or that, which didn't help us stay together because it rather forced everyone to be on a political angle. I had wonderful interfaith ministeriums, both in New York as well in Western Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh area. And I think you're right, Arnie. I think one of the keys for us coming out of this COVID, when it happens, God willing, will be to reinvest that. Now, I reached over to our Jenny Schultz Thomas, who's the new pastor at the United Church of Christ down the street from us, and I'm on their committee for an adult education thing. But I told her, I said, Jenny, I said, what we really need is not just to bring in these superstars. You know, she has this, you know, very important celebrities going to come in and talk. Okay, that's nice. I said, but one of the things that we did early on was we had interfaith study with congregants. You know, it's not just ministers and rabbis and priests, but rather it's people of the community that are getting together. And so you're right. We've gotten away from a lot of it, and there's all kinds of reasons why, but so what, why? Now we have to just say it's necessary to bring new life to those things. So, well, we'll hopefully be able to build on that. So with that, I'm afraid we're over time, and Shana Jacobs is going to say, oh my God, these people, they don't stop. We're supposed to be over at 1. So Shana, welcome to you and to everyone else. Couple of real quick things. Friday night, Susan and I are going to be leading the services, so I hope you tune in. We'll have some fun music as well. We also, on Saturday night, it's our Slichot service. So I've got some members of the choir. We're going to go through liturgical music, and it's going to be fabulous. It's going to be both in person in this Zwerin sanctuary. We'll hear the shofar. We'll change the Torah covers to the high holidays, but it's also going to be a broadcast. So if you don't want to come in, I understand. If you are interested in coming into a service, please know that you're welcome to do so. Even the high holidays, you have to register though. And right now we do not have a limit as to how many will come in, but we gotta wear your masks. The choirs will have their shields on, their own masks. So we'll be safe. We're going to spread it out. We won't have 1,000 people at services, but we'll have at least a couple hundred. We already have a couple hundred registered for like Kol Nidre and others. So, but if you're interested in coming in, even for 1 or 2, please do so. We'll play it safe and play it by ear. And when you can, get a booster. All right, guys.
I have one question.
Yes,
you
sir.
mentioned that for the high holidays, you have some written brochures or something to follow the service. Can you get that at the front desk?
No. You're right. Come into the temple and not the Rotenbusher, the Machzor is the prayer book. They're the set of high holiday prayer books you can purchase, and you can just come to the temple and say, hey, I want to buy a set. And that's a lot easier to follow with the book than it is on the line. Right.
I have one. Okay.
Yeah. So get a Machzor if you don't already have one. All right, guys. Sei gesund.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.